young were some of the child stars singing our favorite songs back in the 1970s? Back when the biggest names were barely old enough to drive, if they could even reach the pedals in the first place. From pint-sized chart toppers to teen idols plastered on every bedroom wall, these young stars proved talent has no age limit. So let's turn back the dial and remember the kids and teens who didn't just dream of stardom, they were already living it before they were adults. Donny Osmond. You remember Jimmy, right? The littlest Osmond? All dimples and that just happy to be here grin, standing in front of the mic while his older brothers harmonized behind him. Well, in 1972, this 9-year-old pulled off something no one's topped. He took Long-Haired Lover from Liverpool to #1 in the UK, becoming the youngest person ever to do it. You couldn't turn on the TV or flip through a teen magazine without seeing that smile. Of course the Osmonds were everywhere already, but Jimmy's hit was icing on the cake. It was wild seeing a kid barely old enough to ride a bike selling millions of records. And he wasn't just there for the cuteness. The kid could perform, whether solo or with the group. He made it look effortless. He opened the door so us fans could daydream about becoming a star before making it to high school. Now after that early success, Jimmy stayed busy, singing, producing, even running his own businesses. And of course he had to reunite with his siblings for concerts that sent fans right back in time. That record of his still stands, and just thinking about it brings that cheerful chorus right back into my head. Lena Zavaroni.
Why do these eyes of mine cry?
Now here's one you might remember from across the pond. Lena Zavaroni was just 10 years old in 1974 when she was blasted onto the UK charts with Ma, He's Making Eyes at Me. Just 10 years old, 10. And the voice, forget child singer, she sounded like she'd been belting it out in smoky clubs for decades. No, really, one critic actually said she had, quote, the lungs of a 40-year-old diva trapped in a tiny Scottish schoolgirl. And honestly, yeah, that about sums it up. Now Lena became a sensation almost overnight. Every variety show wanted her, audiences loved that mix of polish and pure kid joy. Like she couldn't believe she was up there either. And Lena didn't stay a UK secret for long. She even crossed over to the States, popping up on the Carol Burnett show and just owning it like primetime TV was her natural habitat. For fans, it was one of those jaw-dropping moments. I mean, wait, she's how young? Just 10 years old, and she was giving people goosebumps all around the world. And even now, her old clips still do. Every time one surfaces online, I end up watching it all the way through, shaking my head and saying, man, she really had it at just 10. Cherie Currie. If you were into rock and roll in the mid-70s, you couldn't miss Cherie Currie. At just 15 years old, she was fronting the Runaways, a leather-clad all-girl rock band blasting out Cherry Bomb like they own the frickin' world. She hit that stage in a corset, fishnets, and more confidence than most grown-ups, snarling into the mic like she had been doing it forever. And for a lot of us, it was shocking in the best way to see someone that young commanding a rock crowd like that. The Runaways were a different group for the time, wild, loud, and not afraid to push buttons, and Cherie became the face of that attitude, part teen idol, part rebel. You could tell she was having the ride of her life.
Cherry Bomb! Hello, world, and your wild girl!
Their music might not have topped the charts, but hey, it lit a fire under a lot of young musicians who realized rock wasn't just for the boys. After leaving the Runaways, Cherie went into acting and also chased a solo career, but her time with the band became the stuff of legend. She has since written a memoir and still performs, often revisiting those same songs that made her a teenage rock icon. I mean, one thing's for sure, when you hear Cherry Bomb today, you can still picture that 15-year-old strutting across the stage like she frickin' owned it. Ricky Segall.
Clouds will drift away, now please don't cry, and maybe tomorrow
Now this one takes you straight back to the Partridge Family years. Ricky Segall was just 4 years old when he joined the show in '73. 4. Tiny microphone in hand, standing there singing his heart out with America's favorite fictional family band. The producers leaned all the way into that cuteness factor, and hey, it worked. He had that sweet, shy but charming vibe where you smiled before he even hit a note. They gave Ricky his own little musical spots on the show, which was wild for someone barely out of preschool. Fans remember him as the wide-eyed bonus partridge, the secret weapon for maximum awe.
Nothing ever stops you, 'cause you got a great big start, so please remember.
And for kids watching at home, it was like, hold up, if this little guy can get on TV, maybe I can too. After his Partridge run, Ricky didn't fade, he kept it up. Acting gigs, voice work, even fronting his own band later on. And these days, he's a regular at nostalgia events, happily embracing that place in TV history. And fans still light up when they see him, because to them, he'll always be that pint-sized scene stealer who somehow held his own with the rest of the Partridge gang. Tanya Tucker.
Take you to his mansion in the sky.
Do you remember the first time you heard Tanya Tucker's voice on the radio? You probably thought that had to be some seasoned country singer who'd been around for years. And nope, she was just 13 singing Delta Dawn like she'd lived every heartbreak in the book. Because her voice had grit, warmth, and that maturity that just stopped you in your tracks. Even if you weren't really into country music, you had to respect what she was doing with the song. And she didn't just stick to the country crowd either. Tanya crossed right into pop territory, and folks from all walks of life were listening. I always thought she carried herself with this old school confidence, like she knew exactly who she was and where she was headed. You could actually see that in the way she handled interviews. She was smart, she was poised, and she was never flustered, even with all that sudden fame. Now, unless you live under a rock, you know that Tanya went on to have a huge career, with hit after hit and a reputation as one of the toughest, most respected women in the business. She is still out there performing today, and hearing her sing now feels like catching up with an old friend. But for me, and I know a lot of you, nothing tops that memory of discovering that deep, powerful voice belonged to just a 13-year-old. Leif Garrett.
Now there's nothing to do. Wait for the summer, wait for the summer.
Oh, Leif Garrett. Just saying the name, right or wrong, takes you straight back to the 70s. You couldn't walk past a magazine rack without seeing his face plastered across Tiger Beat, 16 Magazine, Teen Beat. He was everywhere. That feathered blonde hair, the megawatt smile, that laid-back California cool. He was basically the poster child for, well, posters. When his pop career kicked in during his mid-teens, it was like somebody hit fast forward. Suddenly, he's singing on TV specials, popping up at award shows, and blasting from every school dance playlist. I Was Made for Dancing turned into his anthem, and fans screamed like the Beatles had just walked into the room. What made him stand out was how easily he slipped between the worlds. One minute he's acting in hit TV shows and films, and the next he's belting out a song to a crowd of kids losing their frickin' minds. He had that rare mix of boy next door charm and superstar confidence, and for teens back then, Leif wasn't just cool, he defined it. Sure, his career had ups and downs, but he never disappeared. Reunion tours, nostalgia TV, even poking fun at his teen idol past. Leif leaned into it all. And today, those old posters still hit like a time machine. You look at that smile, hear that faint scratch of a vinyl spinning in your head, and suddenly you're back in your room, deciding which picture of Leif gets taped up on the wall next. Shaun Cassidy. Shaun Cassidy was one of those guys who seemed to have it all going at once in the late 70s. You'd turn on the TV and boom, there he was, cracking cases on the Hardy Boys with that boy next door smile. And then you'd flip on the radio and hear him singing That's Rock and Roll, and you'd realize, yeah, same guy. And he was just a teenager through it all, juggling acting and a full-blown pop career before he even hit 20. Remember the buzz whenever the Hardy Boys came on? It was event TV for a lot of families, and if you were a teen back then, Shaun was pretty much unavoidable in the best way. He had that friendly, approachable vibe, like you could run into him at the record store and he'd actually say hi. But on stage, he knew how to work a crowd, and those concerts were packed with fans who knew every word. Shaun's music career cooled off as the 80s rolled in, but he kept right on working in entertainment, acting, writing, producing, you name it. In these days, he's more behind the scenes, but whenever he pops up for a reunion or a nostalgia event, it's like stepping back in time. And hearing one of those songs today, it instantly takes you back to those Friday nights, waiting for the Hardy Boys theme song to kick in. Donny Osmond. In the early 1970s, Donny Osmond wasn't just popular, he was everywhere. Teen magazines, check. TV specials, check. Records flying off the shelves, check. This kid was a one-man pop culture wave. He was barely a teenager and still juggling schoolwork, but somehow he was melting hearts around the world with puppy love. Parents actually loved him, and teenagers swooned. It was the perfect combo.
And they called it puppy love.
You could not flip through Tiger Beat without seeing Donny Osmond, and if Puppy Love came on the radio, the whole room would just stop. Teen girls went quiet, hanging on every word. Even the guys, though they might not admit it, had to hum along. And what made Donny stand out was how polished he seemed. He could go from a bubbly pop tune with his brothers to a soulful ballad all on his own.
To take away my only dream.
And then he'd turn around and co-host Donny and Marie like he'd been doing primetime TV forever. And in a way, I guess he had. He was always smiling, he was always confident, and he was always making it look super easy. And the crazy part is he never slowed down. Broadway, Vegas, Dancing with the Stars. Donny's kept reinventing himself, but never losing that approachable boy next door vibe. And hearing Puppy Love today, it's like an instant flashback to a bedroom covered in posters and a TV tuned in to catch the next Osmond appearance. Seriously, Donny Osmond, pure teen idol magic. Marie Osmond. Now, Marie Osmond carved out her own place in the family spotlight at just 13 years old with Paper Roses. Of course, the Osmonds were already a household name thanks to the brothers, but Marie's sweet but powerful delivery on that song, she showed she was more than just the sister. I mean, she was so polished for someone just barely in her teens, and suddenly she was right up there with Donny, sharing in all that fame. What made Marie stand out was how natural she seemed on stage. She had this mix of poise and warmth that made you feel like she was singing just for you. And when Donny and Marie hit TV, she proved she could be just as funny and quick-witted as she was musically talented. Watching the two of them together, it felt like being invited into the world's most entertaining sibling rivalry. Marie kept on going long after the 70s too, recording albums, acting, hosting TV shows, and touring. She's just one of those performers who never really left the spotlight. And every time Paper Roses comes on, it's impossible not to picture that fresh-faced 13-year-old holding her own in a family full of stars. Andy Gibb.
I was chasing your affection, I was doing you no harm, and I was...
Andy Gibb was like the Bee Gees' secret weapon, only he didn't need his famous brothers to own the charts. The youngest Gibb was barely out of his teens when he knocked out 3 straight #1 hits, I Just Wanna Be Your Everything, Love Is Thicker Than Water, and of course Shadow Dancing. I mean, seriously, that's a run that most veteran artists would just dream of. And man, that voice, smooth, romantic, and a little bit vulnerable. It had that thing that made you feel like Andy was singing just for you. And combine that with that smile and the hair and the disco swagger, I mean instant teen idol. By the late 70s, he was everywhere. Magazine covers, TV guest spots, co-hosting Solid Gold. If you were a teenager back then, it felt like Andy Gibb was your daily soundtrack. Critics called him the fourth Bee Gee without trying, but fans didn't care about comparisons. Andy had his own kind of magic. He could light up a stage, but he also had this approachable charm, like the boy next door who just happened to have a #1 record. Now his time at the top was sadly shorter than it should have been, but those hits still sparkle today. Maybe we should all listen to Shadow Dancing today, and suddenly we'll be back under that disco ball at the roller rink. Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson wasn't just a young star, he was the young star of the 70s. At only 11 years old, he was out front leading the Jackson 5, dancing like no one else and hitting notes most singers could only dream about. By the time most kids were figuring out middle school locker combinations, Michael was already a showbiz veteran with hit after hit. ABC, I Want You Back, I'll Be There. I mean, wow. And the wild part was he made it look effortless, like he was just having fun with his brothers. Remember watching him on TV and being floored at how much personality he packed into every single performance. He had the smile, those spins, and that energy that just pulled you in. Even if you weren't really a huge Motown fan, you couldn't deny this kid had something magical. Michael wasn't just keeping up with the older guys, he was the tiny guy stealing the show. Of course, we all know where his career went from there. Solo albums, iconic videos, worldwide fame. But in the 1970s, it was all about that pint-sized dynamo who seemed born for the stage. And when I hear early Jackson 5 songs now, I can still picture him bouncing across the stage in those colorful outfits, owning every single second of it all. Debby Boone. Debby Boone came out of nowhere in 1977, and suddenly you couldn't turn on the radio without hearing You Light Up My Life. She was just 21 years old, but she sang it like she'd been carrying heartbreaks and big love stories for decades. That slow build, that emotional payoff, it was tailor-made for roller rink slow dances and wedding playlists. 10 straight weeks at #1. 10! It basically owned 1977. She had music in her blood, of course. Her dad, Pat Boone, was already a legend, but this was Debbie's spotlight. And she brought a wholesome, almost glowing sincerity that clicked perfectly with the song. Critics called it, quote, the anthem of the year. And fans, well, they bought the single by the millions. At one point, DJs joked that you couldn't request the song because they were already playing the song. And she wasn't just a one-hit guest star on the charts. Debbie leaned into that clean-cut image, slid into Christian music, Broadway, and kept performing for decades. But for most of us, she'll always be frozen in that moment. Soft lighting, big hair, the kind of ballad that makes you grab whoever's next to you and sway. I mean, try me, put it on today, and instantly you're back in the 1970s, and Debby Boone is again lighting up the airwaves. Jamie Redfern.
I'm your little boy, just your little boy.
Jamie Redfern might not be a household name in the States today, but in the early 70s, he made quite an entrance. He was just 15 when fellow Aussie Helen Reddy brought him over in the US, introducing him to American audiences on shows like The Tonight Show and The Mike Douglas Show. Remember seeing this fresh-faced kid with a huge voice and thinking, alright, this guy's going places. He had that clear, classic pop style that fit right in with the variety show era. Now back home in Australia, Jamie was already a star thanks to Young Talent Time, so he already knew how to work a stage. He wasn't just a novelty teen singer either, he carried himself with real confidence, and you could tell he loved performing. There was just something wholesome about him that made audiences root for his success. Jamie's career kept going strong in Australia long after the US appearances ended. He stayed connected to music, performing and recording, and for those who saw him back in the day, he's remembered as that talented teen who crossed an ocean to sing for America. Thinking back on it now, it's just one of those fun little remember when stories from the 1970s music scene. Janet Jackson. Before she was a superstar in her own right, Janet Jackson was the quick-witted kid stealing scenes on the Jackson variety show. Just 11 years old, but she carried herself like she'd been in showbiz forever, cracking jokes, dancing right in step, jumping into the skits. She wasn't just a little sister, she was already a star in the making. I know a lot of you watched and thought, oh boy, this kid's gonna be trouble, in the best way. She had that spark, that natural ease when you forget you're watching a child. She wasn't just reciting lines or hitting her marks, she was connecting, playing with an audience, flashing that grin that made you want to see what she'd do next. And fans loved it. People would write into the show saying things like, I tune in for the Jackson 5, but I stay for Janet. Even the critics noticed how she stood out. Of course, none of us knew she was about to reinvent herself in the 80s and 90s with Control and Rhythm Nation. And that she would become one of the biggest pop icons in the world. But if you go back and watch those early clips, it's all right there. The timing, the charisma, the voice. That 11-year-old was already giving you previews of the icon she'd grow into. Little Stevie Wonder. By the time the 70s rolled around, Stevie Wonder had already done what most musicians dream of, and he was still in his early 20s. He'd been a hitmaker since his teens in the 60s, but the new decade saw him completely reinvent himself. And honestly, pop and R&B went right along with him. Albums like Talking Book, Inner Visions, and Songs in the Key of Life were everywhere, and they weren't just popular, they were honestly groundbreaking. Remember hearing Superstition for the first time and thinking, welp, music just changed. What made Stevie's run in the 70s so exciting was that he wasn't playing it safe. He was experimenting with synthesizers, tackling big social themes, and still delivering songs that made you want to dance. You could go from the groove of I Wish to the sweetness of You Are the Sunshine of My Life and feel like you'd been on a complete musical journey. And here's the thing, he did all of this after already being a child star, which is no easy trick. Stevie's work from that era still feels fresh today, which is why those albums get rediscovered again and again. When I think of him in the 1970s, I picture a young man, totally in command of his craft, smiling behind those sunglasses and making music that would never go out of style. Alright, looking back, it's crazy how young some of these stars were when they became part of our lives. A 9-year-old topping the charts, teens selling out arenas, kids stealing TV scenes. They grew up in front of us, and their songs and moments still hit just like they did back then. So, which one sticks out in your memory? Who was your favorite child star that I mentioned? Maybe you had their poster on the wall, maybe you danced to their song at your school dance or your wedding. Either way, I want to hear your stories, because after all, we here at Do You Remember are nothing without you. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that thumbs up icon. If I forgot a child star, add them in the comments. Make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a trip down memory lane. But most importantly, from all of us here at Do You Remember, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget, sometimes the kids really do run the show.